So welcome everyone. Today we are here for the Climate Democracy in Action webinar to learn from a lot of our participants from all over the world and some of our partners who have been practicing climate democracy. So today we're here to share some insights on climate action, some best practices, some strategies, some learnings and case studies from around the world. We're here to showcase how participatory democracy is being used as a climate solution globally. We're also here to share more about the open call we have for the Climate Democracy Accelerator. So stay tuned for that one. And on our agenda today, we'll have some lessons from how participation is being used to address climate change. We'll hear from our practitioners from Nigeria, India, Brazil, even Argentina. We also have Valerie joining from the Netherlands, so we have lots of experiences. And then we will also tell you a little bit more about how you can apply for the next cohort if you're here to learn more about the new open call. So then we'll also have a question and answer or a discussion at the end, and some breakout rooms so that we can have a bit more in-depth discussions. Next slide. Yeah, and as you can see today, I'm not alone. I'm joined by a range of speakers, a very, very like rich discussion that we'll be having today. From People Powered side, I'm joined by Valerie Molay, our Climate Democracy Accelerator coordinator. And then we also have from OGP, Mercedes Nassif. Mercedes, where are you? You're somewhere there. Then from Delibera Brasil, we also have Marcella. Then we're also joined by Elizabeth Mwaura from Pipal Tree, joining us from India. I hope it's not too late for you, Elizabeth. Then lastly, we also have David joining us from Nigeria. So a very global range of speakers. Thank you for joining us, and you'll hear from all of them just now. Next. But before we get started and get into the meat of the session today, let me just take you through into who is People Powered and why we're here today. People Powered is a global hub for participatory democracy. We were formed to address a big global challenge, which is democracy, of course. We see that democracy is backsliding around the world, and this is happening in part because most voices are left out of government decisions. And if people don't think they're meaningfully engaged in government decisions, they end up distrusting governments and are more likely to support authoritarian leaders. And at People Powered, we think participatory democracy is one of the answers to this challenge. However, we see it's hard to meaningfully engage people in government, and it's difficult for people to do it alone, which is why we exist. And so we're here to help. That's why People Powered exists. We're here to support organizations and governments that are building participatory democracy around the world by promoting learning, providing resources, and capacity building on different participatory approaches and creating a peer community for learning and exchange and practice. So we're a member-based organization that brings together local and national organizations, civil servants, and practitioners working to advance participatory democracy. And most of our work is done with our partners, as you'll hear from some of our partners later. And our accelerators that you hear about just now are great examples of how we support governments, SCOs, and advocates to design, launch, and implement participatory democracy around the world. But I think that's a lot of me talking. Let's hear from all of you now. What brings you to this webinar today? Are you here to share something? Are you here to learn something? Put it in the chat and we will maybe I'll pick a few to learn from. I hear that there's a bad echo, but I don't hear an echo. Let me know if there's an echo from my side, Ryan.
It's all
Ooh.
good.
Thanks. Role of behavior in democracy. Some people are here to learn and share. I love that. I hope we can also learn from you as we're going. Thank you. To learn and socialize. I like that. Okay. Thank you, everyone. You can keep using the chat to talk to each other and talk to us. If you have any technical issues, just put it in the chat and we'll try to assist you. But before I continue, I'm going to hand it over to Valerie to start us over on the power of climate democracy.
Thanks so much. I think this is perfect. Can you all hear me, actually? Not sure if you can hear me. Oh, good. Yeah, thanks so much, Melissa, for the introduction. Super great to be here with all of you. I see the numbers that are around in the room. Amazing. I have the hard task of talking about the power of climate democracy. In climate democracy, we hear two things. We hear climate, and then we hear democracy. And maybe if we can go on to the next slide. So when it comes to climate change or the climate crisis, we know it as sea level rising or temperature is increasing, and extreme weathers and things like that. But actually, all of these things can feel a little abstract, but it's actually impacting the everyday life. And what does that look like? Well, it looks like soil being totally degrading in a way where farmers and families who rely on the land cannot make ends meet anymore, or cannot cultivate as they usually do. It means like people with some health issues have them exacerbated because of extreme weather, extreme heat, because of pollution that is increasing, and having a lot of different sicknesses being exacerbated. So sometimes those words like extreme weather, temperature can feel so far away from us, but actually on the everyday base, it really impacts our food security, our ability to be able to actually provide food for everyone. It impacts our ability to move around, like transportation, where we've seen now with extreme weather, actually some infrastructures are actually losing their abilities and things like that. But above all, there's an element about climate change, which is that those impact that I'm talking about tends to, those that have contributed the least actually tend to feel those impact that I'm talking about the most. They have less voices, they're less included in the decision making around like responding to climate. So with climate change, we already know that there's some that are left behind, and they tend to be those that have not contributed the least to the problem. But above all, with climate change, we also have how we respond to it. We have to bear in mind that to make sure that how we're responding to the climate crisis does not already exacerbate the already existing inequality within our society. So I have there listed adaptation, mitigation, uh, resilience, and conservation. Those are usually the approaches that we look towards climate change. So we want to adapt, make sure that we're more resilient to the situation that the climate impact is going to bring us. Mitigate, make sure that we are stopping or reducing our greenhouse gas emission, which actually causes the climate crisis to be exacerbated. But in making all of these decisions, we also ought to keep in mind that these decisions ought to not only not exacerbate existing inequality, but it ought to also be used as opportunity to actually respond to some of the inequality that exists. And for like a simple example is there's so many communities that do not have access to electricity, for example, as we are thinking about a mitigation approach of moving towards renewable energy, how about we make sure that those communities have access to electricity that is clean and pure? So this is a little bit of the climate challenge that we have, but also how we frame it or articulate it in a way where it's a systemic approach. Uh, it is both protecting, not to exacerbate inequality, but at the same time as an opportunity to actually allow more people, especially those that are the most impacted, to actually have a voice and a say in it. And I think that's where the democracy element comes in. So Here, my question is always, we endlessly talk about climate crisis, but who gets to decide? Who gets to be left out of the decision making? So here we see those twofold of the both the democratic crisis and um, uh, and the climate crisis at the same time. And so here I always think about like the justice approach, where those that are hit the most have to be at the front line of the decision making room. So they have to be invited in the policy room to be able to actually contribute to the decisions and the resolution. But also practically, there's another practical example that we know and we've seen that top-down climate policy tend to fail, right? So when community feels like they are part of the conversation, they have designed the process, they tend to build more durable climate solution because it means that there's trust and there's design provided. And I think this is where climate innovation, right? Taking into account existing democratic infrastructure, allowing for centering voices of citizen and creating the capacity for the everyday citizen to be informed about what is the climate crisis, how does it actually impact me, and what can I do to also participate in making sure that we are both all responding to this issue at hand. Maybe we can move on to the next slide. So as I said, then climate democracy is addressing climate change with this democratic innovation. So it is about creating climate action, engaging it within decision making of community. It's about creating awareness, inviting young people and not seeing them as just a group that ought to be responded to, but actually asking young people, what do you think? How do you want to contribute to your future? Allowing them to create that awareness, but also to shape and participate climate policy. Maybe we can move on to our next slide. Then, what does it look like in action? How does climate democracy looks like in practice? Well, I'm not going to say a lot about this because already we have an amazing array of people that are going to give us case studies of what's happening. But in short, I'm going to talk about the Climate Democracy Accelerator program because that is climate democracy in action. The Climate Accelerator program, what it does is it's a capacity building initiative that helps government, civil society leaders to launch participatory processes to address climate change. So it goes back to what we were talking about, right? So allowing people the space, especially those that are the most vulnerable, the ones that are the most marginalized, to come in and actually give their opinion, but above all, shape the sort of solution, the implementation that needs to be addressed to address climate change. So the program supports government, civil society, community to respond to climate change by doing mentorship, by also providing different training sessions that allow you to understand the different participatory method that you could use, the sort of inclusive practice that you can take in to make sure that you are really bringing the voices that ought to be at the table. So we have several, we are at a sixth cohort, so a sixth iteration of this project around. Just to give you a little bit of a quick I'm going to pick up one case study of our participant who through the program ended up establishing subcommittees, climate change committees within Nairobi City, where this structure now allows participants, so women, young people, to actually be able to sit on this committee and actually look at the implementation plan that the Nairobi City Council are coming up with for climate change. So suddenly the everyday citizen is not outside anymore, but it actually is part of the conversation. It's part of shaping the implementation and it also coming up with their own solution. I hear that because of the subcommittee that was set up, now they have wards where they're creating their own climate policy action action plan also to follow up and who is responsible for who needs to do what. And it's just amazing to see all of this in practice. And I think that's what climate democracy is in action. So I can't wait to hear more, and I hope you guys will hear more about what people are doing on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Valerie, for that framing and for those opening statements. I'm just going to hand it over to Mercedes from OGP, our partner, who has been supporting the program and working with us since, I think, the very beginning, to share some reflections on the role of open government principles in advancing climate democracy and some lessons based on some of the CDA work that's been done by OGP members. Mercedes?
Thank you so much, Melissa, and thank you, of course, People Powered for this invitation. For those who might not know, Open Government Partnership is a global partnership of governments and civil society organizations that are working together to make governance more transparent, participatory, accountable, and in the end, responsive to citizens. And OGP Local is a partnership's global local government program supporting engagement and implementation with subnational governments. So in practice, this means creating opportunities for citizens, civil society, experts, and governments to work together, share information, and shape decisions collectively. And increasingly, we're seeing that these principles are essential for climate action. And I think that reflects a broader recognition that climate action is not only about designing ambitious policies, it is also about how those policies are implemented, who gets to shape them, and whether communities trust and support them over time. Because one of the biggest challenges governments face today is not it's not the lack of ideas. Because in many places there are already strong climate commitments and innovative proposals, but implementation gets hard. Governments often face limited resources and capacity or weak coordination across sectors, sometimes also resistance from affected groups, or simply difficulty translating big ideas into sustained action. And this is where open government approaches can really make a difference. Across OGP local members that also participated in the Climate Democracy Accelerator, we're seeing how open government approaches can help local governments strengthen climate planning, guide climate investments, and build trust for climate transitions. So we're going to see a few examples here. As I was saying, first, these approaches can help governments plan together, right? And we have a very concrete example from Quintana Roo, Mexico, where local authorities, civil society organizations, academics, and citizens came together to co-create an environmental governance framework as part of the state's long-term development planning. So through public dialogues and collaborative processes, communities helped shape priorities around environmental protection, sustainable development, and accountability. And what I think is especially important about this experience is that participation was not treated as a one-time consultation exercise, but as a part of the governance framework itself. And that helped create stronger legitimacy and shared ownership around long-term climate action, just as Valerie was saying a minute ago. We're also seeing this in Semarang, Indonesia, where communities work together alongside civil society organizations to document flooding, sanitation, and water access challenges through participatory social audits. So residents generated data and evidence that local authorities previously didn't have. They provided something that the government didn't have. So that helped strengthen climate planning and vulnerability assessments. And I think this is also a very important reminder that communities are not only stakeholders in climate policy that you need to manage, they're really an important source of knowledge and expertise for governments trying to understand local climate impacts and risks. So this is about planning, but next, as I was also saying, participation can help governments collectively prioritize limited resources and investments, right? And here we have the example of Corrientes in Argentina, where the city was facing increasing heat and needed to invest in urban greening initiatives. But of course, resources were limited. They couldn't plant trees everywhere, right? So instead of deciding internally which projects to prioritize, the city worked with residents to identify environmental priorities through participatory processes that including idea collection, deliberation, and public voting of where to start, right? So residents helped determine where new trees should be planted, what kind of interventions would have the greatest impact, and which proposals should move forward. And this matters because climate transitions often involve difficult decisions about priorities and trade-offs. And participation can really help governments make those decisions in ways that are more legitimate, more inclusive, and more responsive to community needs, which is the most important. And third, here I also want to discuss, to mention that participation can help governments build trust and legitimacy, that it's crucial for implementing, especially climate transitions. Any change management needs to be addressed, right? So, because even when governments have these ambitious climate plans, implementation can stall if affected communities are excluded from decision making. We saw this very clearly in Nairobi, Kenya, where efforts to introduce electric buses initially faced strong resistance from matatu operators, that are the bus operators, who feared that the economic impact of this transition. So rather than imposing the policy from the top down, the county government worked with civil society organizations to create structured dialogue spaces where transport operators could voice their concerns, ask questions, and negotiate solutions directly with officials. So the process also intentionally included women, youth, and persons with disability to ensure broader perspective were reflected in the transition. That dialogue helped rebuild trust and ultimately enabled operators to participate in this very first electric bus pilot. And I think this example highlights a very important lesson. That is, participation is not only about consultation, it is really about helping build the legitimacy and trust needed to implement difficult transitions. Across all these experiences, we see a common pattern, that open government principles help local governments build legitimacy, as I've said already many times, strengthen coordination, improve public trust, and create shared ownership over climate action, all needed for better implementation. And that matters because climate transitions are not just technical processes. They are deeply social and political processes as well. For OGP Local, these experiences reinforce that climate governance is not about environmental policy only. It is really about building institutions that are capable of listening, collaborating, and responding to people's needs in inclusive and accountable ways. You can learn a little bit more about these examples in this article that I'm sharing here. You can scan the QR code and access the content. Thank you very much for this space.
Thank you so much, Mercedes. That was such a great summary and great examples of some of the work coming out of the CDA. And now to continue this, we're going to go to our second speaker, David from Nigeria, sharing about mainstreaming climate action in Nigeria. David, over to you.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. Can you all hear me? Great. Okay, so my name is David, Executive Director of Fundlink Aid International. Fundlink Aid International is a Nigerian registered non-profit. We promote inclusive climate governance, improve access to climate finance. We operate mainly at the intersection of policy advocacy, project management, and also we also go through strategy advisory. Next slide, please. I am an example of what Mercedes just spoke about because I came from Plateau State, where I used to be the point of contact person for the Open Government Partnership Local. Plateau State is a member of the OGP, and one of the principles of OGP is citizens' participation. And it was via that principle that OGP introduced me to People Power, and I'm proud to be a member of People Power today. In Plateau State, Nigeria, we're not excluded or insulated from the responses that are coming from climate impact. The climate impacts globally that Valerie spoke about at the beginning, they affect us, although in different ways, which I'll speak about shortly. But in response to that, what we saw was that there was no articulated response by the government of Plateau State as at the time. That was in 2024, when we began to think of how to get them to wake up. So we used the Climate Assembly. The Citizens Climate Assembly is one of the tools, one of the methodologies of participatory democracy that people-powered advocates. And we use that to try and create an impact by building the climate resilience of the Plateau people. We started out hoping that we'll get the government to wake up and put a policy together, articulate its approach to climate response, but we ended up with a lot more than what we started out with. We had a climate action plan, agenda for COP, a climate bill framework, and also ended up mainstreaming the process. Next slide. What's the challenge? Climate challenge that Plateau said was dealing with came from the global climate crisis that are impacting agriculture, because Plateau State, with about 5 million people, is the 12th largest state in Nigeria, actually, and it's mostly agrarian. 70% of people are farmers, and so the climate impact on agriculture is felt. In addition to that, in health and also in livelihoods. In terms of agriculture, irregular rainfall was making people not sure what kind of crops to plant again, because the rainy seasons had shortened or had been fragmented into forms that the crops that they were used to planting, they were not sure again whether they would survive. The droughts, dry spells that were coming in between rainy seasons and making it difficult for them to plant. Flash floods were coming up whenever the rains come, destroying lives and properties. And there was excessive heat leading to a lot of health challenges and also mortality of livestock. The response was neither articulated nor coordinated, in the sense that everybody was just doing his thing as at that time. And because it wasn't articulated, of course, it wasn't coordinated, nobody was spinning off the other person's actions. They're just acting in silos. And so the most vulnerable people, as enumerated by Valerie, the women, the youth, the young people, the people with disabilities, another group that is peculiar to us in Plateau said, we call them the IDPs, internally displaced persons, were neither aware of what was going on or informed about it, neither were they included in the conversations and the actions that were being taken, nor were they empowered to respond to the climate challenge that was going on. Next slide, please. So the Climate Assembly, as an idea, was introduced as we sought to bring people together. We brought all these groups that we mentioned, the vulnerables, plus the usual, the academics, the researchers, the people in government, even international development partners that were operating in the state, professional organizations, and several other, to come together and discuss on how to get the state to wake up, how to get the state to put a policy together. And the discussions were robust. We started with awareness creation, and after that, there were deliberations and resolutions were reached. The whole of that process was in two main sections. There was an in-person contact session that took place in June during the inauguration, and then another one in August to validate the findings. Key takeaways. We noticed that people are actually eager to engage in climate policymaking and governance. That when the participation is structured and when it is respectful and when given the chance and when they know that whatever they say turns out to be something good, then they'll be involved. In Plateau State, I want to say we were lucky because our exposure to OGP had led us to participatory budgeting, and people had seen the impact of participatory budgeting where their voices were actually heard. So when they were invited to come and discuss climate change in an assembly, they came. We noticed also as a key learning that communities do possess valuable indigenous knowledge about how to respond to climate change, especially in the area of agriculture and water management, even ecosystem restoration. Another thing that climate change brought to us was conflict between herders and farmers, because with the deteriorating green spaces were no longer being available, and they are now fighting over the limited resources available. So that became a conflict source. And they already have their own ways of solving these conflicts. So we learned from that and incorporated it into the action plan. We also learned that when a diverse group of people are brought together, there are better climate solutions that come out of it, in the sense that the recommendations that come out are more balanced and should be easily implementable and also acceptable to everybody, because they were discussed in small thematic groups first, and resolutions were reached, compromises were made, and also superior arguments were given way to, and people who saw that there were better things coming out of others listened to others. Also notice in our learnings that government does recognize when there's legitimacy. When they see that citizens' deliberation is genuine, government accepted. The legitimacy that came out of the kind of citizens we brought together was what moved government towards the uptaking of the recommendations that we made, and also the expansion of the agenda of that assembly from initially just having a policy in place to an action plan, also to a COP agenda, and also to develop the framework for the climate bill. Another key learning that we had is that the availability of alternative catalytic funding enhances the acceptance of citizen-led policy initiatives and the uptake of the engagement outcomes. Why we said this is because the support that came from people power wasn't just technical, there was also financial support, and that financial support helped to overcome the initial inertia. Because when you go to a government to approach them to take up a policy position in the middle of a budget year, you have to wait till another budget year, see whether it is even considered. And if you miss that budget year, you wait another whole budget year again. So if there's catalytic funding to get it running and the outcomes are seen, it's easier for government to uptake. That was a learning that we had. Next slide. The assembly was supposed to hold, deliberate, recommend, submit recommendations, and then disengage. However, because of the level of legitimacy that it had and the uptake that government had on it, it also had some post-assembly impacts. The first one was that we noticed that after the assembly, participants who were in the assembly began to understand more how to respond via climate-smart agriculture. And they didn't keep it to themselves. In between those in-person sessions, between June and August, they were going back to their local constituencies where they came from and sharing this knowledge with others. So there is improved uptake of climate-smart agriculture practice. It is also true that what happened after the assembly was a community-level replication of the climate assembly began to happen. This happened at the state level at the beginning, but we've already have a local government, local citizens assembly in place already in one of the local government areas called Langtang South. It was an offshoot of the climate assembly that we had at the state level. And they're already looking at their own contextual issues. Theirs is to look at how they can regenerate their degraded land through agroforestry. We see plans that are being made by various other local governments to see that they also have such local assemblies facing their peculiar contextual issues in various places. Working from within government structure, the assembly became instituted and was working with the government, Ministry of Environment and Climate Change to make decisions, to implement policies also. It created a platform for citizens to be a part of government. That mainstreaming led to 3 key programs. One was the 1 million trees campaign. The 1 million trees campaign became a bigger buzzword in government. And also civil society picked it up from there. And there's a huge march towards achieving that target. Then also Schools Climate Action Challenge was initiated. And this June, I think in the 3rd week of June, the first edition of the Schools Climate Action Challenge will take place. And the good thing about it is not just going to be an academic thing, not just going to be a debate about what do you know about climate change. We're going to watch to see also what action schools have actually taken in response to climate change. And finally, a Plateau State Climate Week, which brings attention to climate change every year, starts on the 30th of June. Flies already flying out there. All of these were outcomes of the assembly. Said is that climate action becomes stronger, move from being beneficiaries of policy to becoming co-creators of the policy. So I'll say, let us not design climate solutions for the people. Let's do it with them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. What a wonderful story about mainstreaming, inclusion, conflict resolution. There's so much to pick from that story. Just a reminder to everyone that we will share the slides and the recording after. Just give us a day or two. And please you can share your questions in the chat that we can answer after. For now, let's move to our Indian participant from Pipal Tree. Elizabeth, over to you.
Thank you very much, Melissa, and thank you everyone for listening. I hope you can hear me clearly. So I work for an organization called Pipal Tree, which is headquartered in Bangalore, south of India, and our operations are in the Karnataka state. We mainly focus on the Adivasis, or the tribals of India, and these are the people that used to live inside the forest. It's called the Nagarahole forest, but they were evicted out of the forest, and this was around in the 1970s. And so life for them outside the forest hasn't been easy, because it means that their source of food security, like, hunting and gathering in the forest, is no longer allowed. And now they have to do small-scale farming outside of the forest. And this is something that's new for them, and it's very, very challenging. And as the previous speakers have said, the people who probably contribute very less to climate change and destruction of the environment are the ones that suffer most, and are the ones that are also not included in decision making, in making policies. And sometimes they're also very shy to be involved, and they also do not trust the people who are there and whether they're actually going to look after their interests. So that's the kind of people that we're working with at Pipal Tree. So people who have been historically marginalized and excluded in governance. And as the previous slide said, even as we started working with them, there was also conflict between the communities that we were working with. So conflict between them, and even not trusting that people coming from outside have the best interest for them. So that was a bit of a challenge even for us to be able to break through and tell them that what we were doing was for their own good and for the entire community. So as I said earlier, the community now depends on small-scale farming, but because of climate change, the rainfall is erratic, there are droughts, water scarcity, and declining groundwater, which actually is caused by commercial farming, which is using a lot of water, like plants like ginger, sugarcane, banana, and others that are really water intensive, and also some of them that use a lot of pesticides. So water is getting depleted, and then a lot of pesticides also really mess up the soil. So the soil is not very good for them to do their farming. The water is not enough. So we are working with about 43 families on an area that is about 83 acres. And what we are doing currently with them is we have created a watershed. So at this watershed, what is happening is that when it rains, the topsoil runs off, and therefore the nutrients of the soil are washed off, and then water logs in a certain area. So in that area, plants cannot grow. And because the lakes were neglected for so long, they don't collect water properly. So it rains, but water is not conserved. The soil is washed off, so it's not good enough for farming. So what we have been doing with them is we created committees through which we are working. And with these watershed committees, what we have done is, first of all, to address food insecurity by encouraging them to have kitchen gardens, because now they do not have the access to the forest where they used to get uncultivated vegetables and other things like tubers from the forest, which are very nutritious apparently. So they're not able to get that, and even to hunt some small animals that they used to. So now we're encouraging them to do kitchen gardens. And for that, we have encouraged them to do organic farming and also doing organic manure, making this right at their farms, vermicomposting, and using other dry matter and farm waste to just make manure that is going to help enrich the soil. The other thing is, because some of these people, when they come out of the forest and they don't have any other work to do, they migrate to the neighboring states where they find labor. And like, for example, when we started doing this, we couldn't even find enough men to work with because they had migrated to other areas. But after speaking with them severally, we had a lot of consultations with them, telling them how this was going to be beneficial to them. And gradually, they started believing in us and they agreed to work with us. Then, of course, we were able to work with the other gatekeepers of the community, to work with the local governance bodies, which we call the panchayats. And having worked with them over a period of a few months, gradually they have started accepting us and believing in what we're telling them, and they're seeing the result. So as you can see, I don't know if you can see that there is a tractor there that's working on restoring one of the lakes there. So they dig out the soil, the silt from the lake, and this silt is taken back to the farms, and it's mixed with the soil on the farm, and it actually helps in enriching the soil there. And one of the things that the community has been very happy about is that there is a lake that has been deteriorating for so long, and water wasn't collecting there because of the silt. But after our efforts together with, of course, the local governance, the local leadership program, the lake has now been rejuvenated and water is collecting there. And one of the things that they're happy about is that when we did the lake restoration, a lot of the bushes around the area were cleared. And they told us that after clearing these bushes, they are now able to access the area safely with their animals, because before then, there has been a lot of human and wildlife conflicts. We have a lot of tigers in that area and other wild animals that would hide, and a few people and a few livestock have been killed by the wild animals. But now, having cleared this, they feel safe that they can go there and they can actually access the water properly. So the learnings from this is that continuous engagement and listening, both sides, listening to the community and them listening to us and trusting us, and the local governance bodies also agreeing to whatever we were telling them. And a lot of consultations happened. That really helped us to build trust over time. Participation, of course, grew through the community involvement. They not only came to sit and plan, they also offered their support in kind. There's a concept in India called the Shramadana, where people come and do work together, communally, they do their work together. And then the women have also been playing a big leadership role, like I said about the kitchen gardens. These are mostly done by a group of women that we call the Village Sisters. They're the ones who are championing the kitchen garden and conserving traditional seeds and organic seeds. And also they've been able to speak in the panchayat meetings, in the local governing bodies meetings. They are now gradually being able to speak with confidence and articulate their issues. So collaboration between the communities and the local governance, and not just the Adivasis, even the non-Adivasis are now seeing the benefit. For example, when that lake was rejuvenated, it serves not only the tribal communities, it's also serving the other neighboring communities, which are about 8 villages. So everyone can see the benefits of this. So the Adivasi communities have become contributors to their own affairs as far as climate resilience is concerned, through their labor, knowledge, and local resource contribution. Next slide, please. So this is the watershed program, the watershed diagram. After everything is done and when the rains come, this is how it's going to be. There's going to be a big lake that also put some of the water in a nearby lake. And then, as you can see, there'll be many trenches. And in these trenches, within the farming land itself, the trenches also collect water, which can also be used for irrigating the land, and the animals can also use. So I'll not bore you with the technical details, but you can see that little table there that shows the number of banks that we have constructed, the trenches, and the width. But as I said earlier, the biggest story about this is the restoration of the lake, and the communities are very happy. And because of this, the panchayati members of the local governing bodies and the communities are already talking about the other lakes that they want to restore and the other work that they're going to be doing. So there is dialogue already happening about the things that we hope to do in the future. But this has only come because of the participation of the community, including school children, because we've also talked to them about the impact of this and the benefits of having this watershed in their area. So coming together of the women, the youth, the children, the local governing body, and organizations like ours with support from yourselves, it has actually borne some fruits. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. That was amazing. And now from India, we go to Brazil. Marcella, from Delibera Brasil, who are also now our partner on the CDA, will be sharing about legislative theater and political uncertainty. Marcella?
Hi. Hi,
Hi.
everyone. I'm very glad to be here today, and I will tell you the story of Bujaru Citizens Assembly and the Legislative Theater. And I'm very proud and grateful to also talk on behalf of the Assembly members and also the youth who participating in the Legislative Theater. I work with Delibera Brasil. That's a non-profit organization dedicated to strengthening and deepening Brazilian democracy through deliberation in our ecosystem. And today I want to tell you what happened in Bujaru. That's a small city in the Brazilian state of Pará, in the heart of the Amazon region. And it is a city that produces açaí, tropical fruits, Brazilian nuts that probably you have in your country. It is a place that there's a lot of traditional communities, as indigenous communities, Black people from the forest, riverside communities, and all these people got together in a sample of 50 citizens to decide and to sit and to deliberate about the future of the bioeconomy in that region. So we see that Bujaru were facing a kind of a dilemma in between protecting the forest and produce locally or going bigger with the production, but maybe changing something on preservation. And in the beginning, the assembly, was a dilemma. And after we ended up understanding that there was a fake dilemma, that the dilemma didn't exist because all the 50 members were certain that they wanted for Bujaru was a sustainable development. So, as I said, this assembly brought together 50 residents and to deliberate on the scarcity of job opportunities, low income, biodiversity loss, food insecurity, limited public revenues, and as they were the biggest producer of açaí, the berry that has in the Amazon region in the country, they also have like a big potential to scale up their production and to produce more collectively. So one of the recommendations, for example, of the assembly was making a cooperative together and to like foster the development of fruit production in the region. So as we knew from the beginning of the implementation process, the Citizen Assembly in Bujaru was held in the electoral year. So the city hall could change their head of the city hall, and also the city councilors were running for re-election, or also like could change the whole body of city councilors. So as we were part of a Latin American initiative of consecutive citizens assemblies, we decided to do our citizens assembly before the municipal elections take place, because we saw the elections as an opportunity. It was an opportunity to bring the assembly recommendations into the electoral debate. And to some extent, it worked because even before the assembly concluded, participants, members of the assembly, they organized a public debate with the city councilors, like the city council candidates, and asked them to sign a public letter of support for the recommendations that would be delivered in 1 month. So everything was very hectic in the region, and we were like hopeful that the elections could lift up the assembly work. But something that also the election period brought was the change of the Secretary of Agriculture. Was the person who had approached Delibera Brasil during the open call for organizing the citizen assembly. And this person was replaced by a political appointee. There was no connection with the citizens assembly process. So also some of the city councilors who had supported the citizens assembly project were not re-elected. And the proposals that had been formulated in our project needed to be reintroduced to the new politicians. So there was like new faces, no memory of what have been built, and we had to think about it, like to think who could be the new responsibles for the recommendations in the government. We still had the support of the mayor. The mayor didn't change, but yeah, with the re-election, some priorities in his government have changed, and the key person, the person that was like our point of contact during the whole project, lost the office. So the Secretary of Agriculture was replaced. So this is can happen in any participatory processes, and we knew that when politicians change, the work can be lost. And we saw in CDA open call for the cohort 2 years ago an opportunity to revival the process that was like kind of on hold. So because we were there in Bujaru for such a long time, we also noticed that the youth in that city were very active and active. It was during the carnival time that the Citizens Assembly happened in Bujaru. So we could see there was a carnival parade organized by the youth, and they were on the streets every night rehearsing and dancing and preparing themselves for the competition. And we saw there was like a potential very strong in this community. And that's when we understand that something with the youth could revival the recommendations. And this is where the legislative theater coming to the story. And this observation of the youth potential make us to apply to CDA, and with the resources we reached 35 people, 35 youth, and they come from different regions of Bujaru. And it was very important because some of the youth, they come from the rural areas of Bujaru. It's a very complicated logistics to get into the city center. And but they were like so interested, is so it was like native for them to participate, because it was something that already was kind of there, because there was a teacher in the school. There was already a theater teacher that she was waiting for the opportunity to come together with a theater group. And identifying this person was also very important, and to mobilize the others and connect this teacher with the youth. So we had 12 workshops using concepts of legislative theater of the oppressed. We got the assembly recommendations letter, and we break down all the recommendations with them. And during 10 sessions, they could rehearse their own understanding and their own meanings of the recommendations of the assembly. So we were especially proud of their own reading and own self-understanding of the recommendations. And they came together with a play that is being rehearsing and presenting in the Bujaru city, and also in one event that was organized with the 3 citizens assemblies that we organize in the state of Pará towards COP30s. And the COP30, there was the conference for climate change of the United Nations last year. They presented the play there with all the members of the 3 assemblies, like to show them the potential of a consecutive, combined, mixed method approach in this participatory process. So just to summarize, I want to say that this is still an ongoing project, and the youth are still very eager to present this play for different politicians. This is something that is still happening, but I wanted to say that this is opportunity really make us to understand that a different approach after one participatory process have ended can help to lift it up the recommendations, can help to revive the recommendations with new politicians, with like a new perspective, for example, from the youth. And this was an opportunity that CDA and People Powered helped us to implement and to follow up the strategy of the Citizen Assembly further, and with a different group that really revitalize the way that the recommendations are seen nowadays in Bujaru. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wow, this was a marathon of speakers. Hopefully we can now get some questions from all our attendees. I see a lot of comments, not a lot of questions yet. So thank you everyone for listening. So now we have the opportunity to have a Q&A. If anyone has any questions, put them in the chat. We would love to get to know what you guys are curious about and answer the questions. If you have no questions, that's okay too. Maybe we were just very thorough in our presentations. Thank you. Okay. Yes. Thanks for sharing the legislative theater. Okay. I think there's a question for you, Marcella, about legislative theater. Daniel is curious about how legislative theater process was evolved and adapted since the one that Bo originally wrote about. I don't know if that's directly for you as a practitioner of legislative theater or not. And then we also have another question about how do you sustain the processes over the time, sustain the energy, the engagement, and how do you plant a seed that stays and grows in the long run? I think that question could be for everyone. And then, yeah. So I will put that question to how do you sustain the process over time to David, and then maybe we go to Marcella, and then we do a round robin for everyone. Now I'm seeing
Thank you very much. Okay, so the first question there is how do you sustain the process? Am I audible? Okay, great. For the Climate Assembly in Plateau State, sustainability is assured because there was a strong uptake by government to the process in its entirety. And I'm using this opportunity to answer another question that was asked by Adna at OGP, asking how responsive was government to the recommendations that were made by the Assembly. So because of the strong uptake by government of the recommendations, they were taken wholeheartedly. Every single recommendation that went to the policy draft that came to the Assembly for validation was taken up. Recommendations were made in respect of what needed to be done for people with disabilities, which were not well captured in the policy in the first draft. Recommendations were made also with respect to participation, that is, putting participation as part of the policy, and those were also taken up. Recommendations were made also with respect to how to support citizens who want to engage in climate smart agriculture, and those were taken up also. I want to say that it's a wholesale in the sense that the agenda of the assembly was expanded beyond validation of the climate policy into the co-creation of the state's action plan. It was a 588-page document, and it was co-created between the members of the assembly that were brought from different parts of the state across different demographics and directors and permanent secretaries from various ministries, departments, and agencies of government. Another thing that happened there, huge, was that an office was created for the Citizens Assembly in the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change, mainstreaming it into the everyday governance decisions in climate change in the state. So that while we left there with the next budget cycle, which is 2026 budget, a budget line was created in the state's budget for the operations of the Climate Assembly. With that, we are assured that the assembly is mainstreamed. Another thing that the members of the assembly now committed to doing is to also begin to source alternative funding from other sources and implement projects like the tree planting, the support for climate smart agriculture, the regeneration of land, degraded land. Those were also some of the commitments they made, and they began to do them. One of the NGOs was able to plant 10,000 trees already from alternative sources of funding. So we can see that there are efforts to sustain it both from government and from the civil society members of the assembly. I don't know if I spoke to your question.
Thank you, David. Now I'm seeing lots of questions for everyone. Good thing we have our breakout rooms coming out soon, so everyone can go out to breakouts where they can also get more answers from everyone. Let's see if there's another question. I think there's a question for Marcella about the soft skills of doing a legislative theater. I don't know if you saw that one in the chat for you. We'd also love to learn about the legislative theater process, how it worked, including any soft skills development in the process of capacity building, where folks are prepared to jump into legislative theater, or was there some scaffolding or support to get them there?
Okay, so I didn't mention, but legislative theater is one chapter of the playbook that we had access during the CDA program, and we also had a mentor matched in the program with people powered that was like an expert in legislative theater. I think this was essential, like for us to understand a little bit more. It was also our first time doing this process, this kind of process, and it was a lot of learning and drafting with the mentor what could be a best solution for Bujaru. But I need to say that identify the local capacity was the most important. It was equally important during this process. Identify one person, Silvana in Bujaru, this person who was already ready to conduct the workshops and was a person already very connected with the theater of oppressed, someone who had studied this kind of methodology before, and she was a teacher in the local school. So identifying this person was very important because she was the person doing the workshops and leading alongside with us. So I don't know how we would be like if we had to implement a project like this for the first time by ourselves. So I would say that the local capacity lead us a clear path for us, and this is what makes the magic happen.
Thanks so much. We're gonna do one last question, then we're gonna do the open call and do our breakout rooms now. And then everyone can get more time with the speakers in the breakout rooms. How did you tackle the challenge of including all these diverse groups that come with their own languages, needs, and understandings? This is for everyone in the call, including Valerie. Anyone who wants to answer, how do you tackle the diversity in the communities that you're delivering a participatory democracy project? Anyone with a quick answer from their own experience? Elizabeth, any insights?
Okay, I'd say that from our own experience, it was not easy from the beginning. It was not very easy. And it's only after we held so many meetings trying to tell them about the benefits, involving the local governance and asking them to also speak to the community and tell them the benefits. And when they realize that you actually mean business and you are convinced about what you're trying to do, then somehow they get on board, but there are still a few who are still waiting to see whether this is going to work or not. So not everybody comes on board 100% at the beginning. Thank you.
Yeah, and in our program, we also have a lot on how inclusion should be built in your participatory program from the initial design before you even get to implementation. So now let's talk to the open call. How do you apply for the next CDA now? And then before we go to breakout rooms where we can talk to each other a bit more. Can I have some slides? Okay, good. Thanks. So we have the open call right now open for the Climate Democracy Accelerator and for the Rising Stars Mentorship. So those are two different programs offering support for governments and SCOs that are looking for support. So we can start with the CDA. The deadline for application is June 26th. And the eligibility is for government, SEOs, so nonprofits that can apply in partnership with either government or, yeah, so we need government to apply within partnership with SEO and vice versa. And it's a 6-month program with lots of support, lots of benefits. So for this round, we are aiming to support governments, SEOs, climate advocates, in engaging communities in climate action, particularly focusing on renewable energy and regenerative agriculture. And like I mentioned just now, applicants must show partnerships between the government and SEO that they're working with. And the applications are open to global participants, but we have priority spots for those in Brazil, Indonesia, India, and Mexico. So if you're in those countries, I'll tell you just now how you can get in touch with the organizations that are based in those countries. During the program, like Marcella mentioned, you would get hands-on mentorship, you get hands-on training, you get an implementation grant, and you get to be a part of a movement, a global movement of people engaged in actual active climate action. And there's a whole lot of other benefits. So in terms of getting your application in, if you're looking for support or if you have questions, if you're based in these countries, in Brazil, you can reach out to Delibera Brasil. Marcella, I think, already has put an email address in the chat. If you have questions about how do you apply, she can also guide you through that. In Mexico, we have Accionar. I think they may also be here, but we'll put the details in the chat where you can also reach out to them. In India, we have Priya. You can reach out to our partner there. They can support you. And Indonesia, we have Kota Kita. And if you're in Africa and or not in any of these countries, you can reach us directly, us People Powered at program team at peoplepowered.org. We will support you if you have any questions about your application. So we look forward to your applications. I think we have less than 4 weeks for the deadline. So put in your application soon. The competition is fierce, I must say. We get a large amount of applications. So take your time with your application, put it together properly, and then submit when you're ready before the deadline. Thank you. And then we also have our long-running Rising Stars program. And this is for people who are looking for expert mentorship to develop or improve your participatory democracy program. The mentorship is free. You don't have to pay anything. And I think this program is perfect for emerging leaders looking to deepen their participatory democracy practice and impact. And it's open to global participants. Anyone can apply. Deadline is the same, 26th of June. So please do apply and let us know if you have any questions. We can put, I think my colleagues are putting in all the information you need in the chat. And yeah, I don't think we have enough time for the breakout rooms that I wanted to do now. So we can stay in this main room and see if we can answer any questions that everyone has remaining. Thank you. Any questions either about the application or about anything that we've discussed in the presentation? So feel free to put so in Mexico we have Accionario. Aidana, could you put the link to Accionario for people to reach out to them to get support on their applications? Yes, Marini, you can still apply. That does not matter. You can still apply especially if you already have partnership with local government. Okay. Yes, Susan, you're welcome to also apply. It's not limited to just these priority countries. They are priority countries, but the program is open to everyone to apply. So there will still be spots for people that are not from Brazil, Mexico, and Indonesia and India. So yes, people from Africa can apply. Like David was just here. So people from Africa can apply. If you're not in those priority countries, you can still apply. If you're not a people-powered member, can you apply? Yes, you can still apply. Hopefully you'll become a people-powered member after that, but it does not disqualify you. I'm seeing lots of questions. If any of my colleagues want to help, let me know. Any other questions I've missed? Okay. Let me re-explain the eligibility a little bit in terms of countries. So I imagine this is for the CDA, not for the Rising Stars program. So for the CDA, the program is open to all global participants. So it doesn't matter which country you're from. However, we have priority spots for people that are coming from Brazil, Indonesia, and Mexico. So from those countries. However, it doesn't mean that you will not be selected. If your application is strong, there is still spots for other people that are not from these countries. Thank you. Simone, if you could expand a bit more about what you mean in terms of climate action flexibility. Frank, you can reach us. You can email People Power, the program team, if you have a question about the application. Aidana or Valerie, you can put the email address in the chat. Perfect. So yes, Simon, your question is about the focus areas. Yes, your program should focus on renewable energy or regenerative agriculture, which I guess vast areas, focus areas. They're not very narrow. So you have a lot of climate issues within those two alone. Valerie, would you like to add on that a bit?
Yes, I know, like at first term, when people hear renewable energy or regenerative agriculture, you think it's very narrow, it's very short. But actually, within renewable energy, you have an array of action that could be related to transportation. It could be related to improving solar panel for individual homes and lighting in communities. It could be about generating businesses. So, for example, the case of Civica in Nairobi, who it was about a market, but it was responding to an issue that people were having in their community within the market by actually taking a renewable energy approach by creating refrigerators and stuff. So expand your mind a little bit in terms of these terms. They are broad, but they actually respond to a lot. The same with regenerative agriculture. You have coastal regenerative, you have soil regenerative kind of pieces. So there's so many pieces within those to respond to.
Thanks. Marcella, if I could just call on you as a former participant and now partner, perhaps you could share what makes a strong application for the CDA. What should someone do to make sure that their application is strong and successful, I guess?
Yes, I would say having a good partnership, it's important. So if you are from the government, you should bring along with your application some civil society organizations, people working with the communities properly. And the other way around is also true. If you are a civil society organization and you want to work with a government, it could be like an option, and bringing this partnership already as an intention, it's super welcome. And I also think like having a project, having like a specific mandate, something that you really want to do, a clear idea. It doesn't need to be super specific, but like having wanting to having in mind exactly what you want to do and communicate that very well, it's very important. Like, why do you want to do what you want to do? What is the problem? How people are affected? What can be done to solve the problem? And what is a participatory process or idea that you want to organize to solve this problem? I think as clear as it can be very helpful and successful.
Thank you. I think that's very clear. And if I could also add on to that is originality. And we really want to understand the context of your community, who's being affected, and all of that. So that also means that if you use AI in any way to improve your application, make sure that those contextualized information, those personalized, localized information is not removed from your application. We want to know about the issue. We want to know about your organization. We want to know about the people. And sometimes we don't get that if you've used AI and it has removed all that really, really enriching information in your application. I hope that helps as well. Let's see if there's more question. Yes, Megan, if you would like to email us and ask us any questions about your prospective application, you can email us at program team, and we will see if we can respond to your question. I'm just looking to see if there's any other questions. Yes, you can apply in any of the.
There are questions on the chat that are not about application, but about they are quick questions.
Thank you. So in terms of application, you can apply in Portuguese, in English, in French,
Okay.
and Spanish. So you can choose whichever language you're comfortable with in your application. Okay, let's see. Okay, Valerie, if there's any other questions that I've missed, feel free to answer them as well. So previous application, whether
I think
previous,
the network threw me out there. Am I back?
yeah, you're back.
Not.
David, we can still hear you. So in terms of previous participants from the CDA, can you apply? The simple answer is no, because we would like to expand the amount of people we train. That is the goal. The objective is to train and enable as many people around the world to actually implement participatory democracy for climate action. However, you can apply as a partner. So if you have if you are an SEO that has already been part of the CDA, if you have a government that wants to participate, you can apply with them as their partner, not as the lead participant in the program, because the program is still essentially the same. You would be going through the same training that you did last time. So it won't make much sense to you. So it would be better if someone else leads the application rather than the organization that has already been part of the program. Yeah. Okay. We're coming to the end now. Let me see if there's another burning question that I might have missed.
Melissa,
Mercedes?
there was a
Yes.
question about being part of a collective and wanting to send many application, or should they send one application?
One strong application is what we would recommend, because we don't want to receive too many, disjointed applications. We want one strong application that tells us the story, the issue, and the people affected, and how this program will be able to support with that. Yeah, I think people are asking for the link to apply in the chat, if we could share that as well. Okay. So like I said, Mercedes, I was just about to call on you to see if you had anything else you wanted to share, especially from the OGP side before we close. I don't think I've
No,
called. Okay.
I can't think of any specific opportunity. Just encourage everyone to really consider and explore this opportunity that People Power is bringing, because it's really gonna change what you're doing. The potential is just huge. So I just encourage you to apply.
Thank you. I think that's it for now. But if you have any more questions, feel free to email us. And if you are in India or Mexico or Brazil or Indonesia, feel free to reach out to the organizations that we had on the list on the screen just now, so that they can support you where they can. And with that, maybe we should close. Let me see if I have my slides here. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, for engaging with us. This has been a wonderful time. I think we hope we've reached everyone we wanted to reach, and I've learned so much about who is interested in the program, who has been interacting with who has worked with Delibera, and all of that. So we thank you for attending, for engaging, for supporting, and everything that you've done while we're here. So we have the email on the screen just now, so we will leave that on for a few seconds for everyone to take note. If you have questions about either applying for Rising Stars or for the CDA, please reach out to us. And might I say that the Rising Stars is actually a really great opportunity for people who have already completed the CDA. So if you still want more support from People Powered, Rising Stars is still a great opportunity for you to consider for that work. Yeah, so thank you, everyone. Thank you to our speakers for coming and sticking with us and your wonderful presentation. I think we've all learned a thing or two about climate action today. Yeah, and thank you, Ryan and Aidana, for doing all the background work. Okay, thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.